In the Voice of Russia World Service, welcome to another edition of the Christian Message from Moscow. In western Siberia, on the banks of the river Tom, sits the town of Tomsk. It was founded in 1604 by settlers from the European north of Russia. These were people accustomed to the fierce northern climate and quite capable of working and living in extreme conditions. So the fierce conditions of Siberia did not scare them off. Tomsk was dubbed the gateway into Asia, since from there one could reach the beaten tracks into Peking, Mongolia, the Pacific Ocean. The founding fathers of Tomsk were people of Orthodox faith. Over time, the leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church founded an eparchy there in Tomsk. And that is where our road lies today, to make the acquaintance of the legendary local saint, the elder Fyodor of Tomsk.
Мы почитаем святым, конечно, является святой праведный старец Fyodor Tomsky. Наверное, за пределами Томска многие хорошо знают легенду, которая...
The elder Fyodor of Tomsk is one of the most revered saints in Tomsk eparchy, says its head, Archbishop Rostislav of Tomsk. And widely known outside the boundaries of Tomsk is the legend of how hiding under the name of this elder was Russian Emperor Alexander I. According to legend, the emperor staged his own death in the town of Taganrog on November the 19th, 1825, setting off on pilgrimage across the holy sites of Russia. Eventually, he came to Siberia and committed himself to elderhood, said the archbishop.
While author of the book about Elder Fyodor of Tomsk, that came out in Moscow in 2007, well-known scientist Marina Gromyko insists that the Saint Fyodor of Tomsk and Emperor Alexander I are one and the same. To prove her point, she quotes documents and numerous convincing testimonies of the elder's contemporaries. So it transpires that the legend about the elder and the emperor is more than the stuff of legends. Marina Gromyko insists that representatives of the Romanov dynasty were well aware of this truth. After all, it's known that when in the reign of Emperor Alexander III, the grave of Alexander I was opened, the sarcophagus was found to be empty. However, the Romanovs strictly guarded the family secret and avoided talking about this even amongst themselves, fearful of possible problems regarding succession to the throne. The emergence of the elder Fyodor in Siberia was preceded by his years of pilgrimage to Russia's holy sites. St. John the Ladder defines the term pilgrimage as irreversible renunciation of all that obstructs us in our striving for piety. The elder Fyodor, with a modesty that was his inherent feature, referred to his own pilgrimage as vagrancy. He was often mistaken for a vagabond.
It is known that on September the 4th, 1836, the elder was driving a horse-drawn cart across Perm region, that is, in the Urals. The police stopped him to check his papers. However, he had no documents on him, so they promptly took him to the police station, and 6 days later his case was heard in court. The old man was very tall, of pious, noble looks, generally pleasing manners and ways. All this couldn't but dispose the judges in his favour. However, all their requests to reveal his identity, inform them of his rank and calling, say where he was going, fell on deaf ears. As a result, the old man was sentenced to 20 lashings. They deliberated the possibility of a soldier's life for him, but his age ruled that out. So then the decision was made to exile him to Siberia. Curiously, the elder seemed quite pleased with the sentence. However, using his illiteracy as an excuse, he had someone else sign the court ruling.
In the meantime, many of those who personally knew the elder insisted he was not only literate, but boasted an excellent education. However, all of his life he feared lest a sample of his handwriting find its way into the hands of the authorities.
The refined manners of the elder Fyodor amazed the convicts that he found himself amongst. Besides, the old man was very kind, compassionate, cared for the sick and weak, and had a word of kindness for every person. Soon he was the general favourite, loved by officers and soldiers who accompanied the exiles, as well as by the hundreds of convicts. At stopovers during the night he was accorded a special shelter. The elder enjoyed such all-round trust that he was the sole one of the convicted not to be shackled.
On March 26, 1837, the convicts, with elder Fyodor among them, reached Tomsk. This was a time when the town was in the grips of gold mining fever. It had started after gold deposits were discovered in one of the regions of Tomsk gubernia. Historian Patanin, describing what took place in Tomsk at the time, remarked, "Lackeys were turning into rich folk, while their one-time masters went broke. Neither sermons nor persuasions could have any effect on the gold diggers. The sole way of impacting the lives of the restless souls was by personal example of piety. The life of Elder Tomsk became just such an example to emulate. Hegumen Siluan Vyurov, superior of the St. Alexei Monastery, where Elder Fyodor's holy relics are kept, says,
Father Superior Siluan says that despite his age, and he was over 60, Elder Fyodor led a strictly ascetic lifestyle. He slept on a bare plank with a block of wood for a pillow. He wore a long white shirt of thick sackcloth. He ate very little, once or twice a week. His main staple was rye rusks, moistened in water. Besides, he ate baked potatoes, completed with the skins, and liked black cherry berries. People who visited him brought him various food offerings, but he accepted only bread for himself, giving all else away to the needy. For his pious life, the elder was granted by God the gift of spiritual vision and ability to cure people. He used his gift to serve people and was their spiritual mentor. He could discern the spiritual condition of every person. Human vices could not be concealed from him. And he tried to warn people against making erroneous steps in life. Although, generally, he never aspired to the role of spiritual father. After all, he was not a clergyman or a monk, says the hegumen.
Elder Fyodor spent the first 5 years of his Siberian exile in the village of Zertsali outside Tomsk. One of the local Cossacks, noticing the elder's penchant for seclusion, built him a cottage in the Cossack settlement of Beloyarske, and there the pious Fyodor could pray undisturbed. Nobody saw when or how he prayed. However, after his death, it transpired the elder's knees were covered in calluses. He observed the fast with conviction, without ever demanding of others that they follow his example. The elder walked from village to village in the district, teaching the youngsters their letters. However, he never made attempts to sermonize or dictate to either young or old, never offered unwilling advice, which perhaps explains why people flocked to him for advice in thousands. The elder Fyodor was not only of tremendous height, but remarkable strength too. He could easily lift a whole hayshock with a pitchfork and moved about logs with ease. In a word, this was a kind and clever giant. Everyone could see that he was of uncommon stock, and even asked him if he was ever oppressed by a life of such privation. However, elder Fyodor would smile in reply and say the following:
Why do you think that my present situation is so much worse than the previous? Right now I am free, independent, tranquil. Before, I had to concern myself with how not to stir up envy, brood over my friend's betrayal, and many other things. Now I have nothing to lose. All my worldly possessions are constantly with me, and they are the words of our Lord, and love for our Saviour and for the people around us. You do not understand what joy there is in such freedom of spirit.
Elder Fyodor lived tranquilly in the settlement of Beloyarske until one of the local priests recognized him. This was Ioan Alexandrovsky, exiled from Petersburg to Beloyarske for some misdemeanor. Since Father Ioan had seen the emperor many times, he openly announced that hiding under the guise of Elder Fyodor was none other than the Russian emperor. Elder Fyodor made haste in leaving the settlement. Many well-to-do peasants from nearby villages invited him to take up residence at their homes. However, he accepted the invitation of the poorest of them all, a former convict. Father of a large family, Ivan Malych, the elder spent the winter in his house. Afterwards, the peasants helped construct a cell for him by converting an old sheep barn, and there he lived 10 years. After that, the elder was invited by peasant Ivan Latyshev from the village Krasnorechinske. He built a cell for the pious Fyodor right near the apiary. In that period, between the years 1840 and 1850, as one of Elder Fyodor's contemporaries recalled,
people besieged Elder Fyodor in droves with all manner of requests. One would be concerned about his sickening cow, another had lost a horse, while someone else was plagued by other disasters. It gave the elder great pleasure to give advice and instructions to those seeking his counsel, telling them how to live their lives and what to do to seek God's grace. He also made various predictions in the form of parables. Word of him spread farther and farther, drawing vast crowds of varied folk.
Also not unnoticed were visits made to the elder by high-ranking folk. For example, many recalled how hierarch Afanasy of Irkutsk came to see the elder. And what stunned the local people was that the elder conversed with the hierarch in the French language. Elder Fyodor spoke in the same language to other nobles visiting him. Just like other elders, Fyodor alternated receiving vast crowds of varied folk with periods of complete or partial seclusion for profound prayer. A contemporary of the elder testified,
"Once, without saying anything to anyone besides Ivan Latyshev, he disappeared into the taiga, and after roaming there for some time, chose a spot there for himself, in its very depths. And he asked Latyshev to transport his cell there. He received few people, some he spoke to only outside. In that particular period, he could spend whole days sitting in his cell and never showing himself to his rare visitors."
Later, the elder confided in Tomsk merchant and gold trader Semyon Khromov regarding that period of his life.
"I wanted to seek seclusion in the depths of the taiga woods, far from the crowds of people. But apparently, this was not the will of God."
Tomsk merchant Semyon Khromov gave an account of his encounters with the elder. Let's listen to a brief excerpt from it.
In November of 1852, passing through the village Krasnorechenskaya, I wanted to see the elder Fyodor, about whom I had heard from the monk Parfini of Holy Mount Athos. The elder was living at the time near the apiary belonging to peasant Ivan Latyshev. There was my first encounter with the righteous elder Fyodor. Upon arriving at his cell, I quietly said a prayer to Jesus and stepped in, as the door was unlocked. Upon entering the cell, I once again prayed to the Lord, then saw the grey-haired elder and greeted him. His first question was, "Where do you come from?" And I explained. Then he followed up with, "And whither are you going?" I responded, "To Yeniseisk, on gold trading business." He said a lot to me regarding my business, but this is what I remember particularly well. "It's a pity you're in this gold trading business," he said. "God feeds you without it, you know." He also said that we do much to incense the Lord and the Holy Mother of God, but their mercy towards us, sinners, is truly boundless. He gave me counsel on how a true Christian ought to live. One need not busy oneself so much with the stuff of life, but had better reflect on the future life, on God's kingdom. After this, I began to attend the elder on every occasion I passed by his residence, and upon each visit of mine, he told me not to increase the number of my gold mines. "You have enough," he said. "You shall not want for anything." And he would always add that I should not work on Sundays. "This work," he said, "takes from you all that is beneficial and is a great sin." He warned me to always deal honestly with the workers employed by me and never cheat them out of a single coin. When once my brother did not allow me to have a share in his horse-trading business, and I told the elder about this grievance of mine, he said, "What can you do? Grief comes from thieves and from one's kin too. You must have patience. The Lord will help to deal with this sorrow. All you must do is pray to Him and the Holy Virgin."
Merchant Semyon Khromov at length tried to persuade Elder Fyodor to move in with him in Tomsk. Towards the very last years of his life, the elder accepted the merchant's offer. We shall tell you about the life of the elder Fyodor in Tomsk in our next edition. And there we end another edition of the Christian Message from Moscow. It was directed by Vladimir Dyomin, author and music editor Tatiana Shvetsova, sound engineer Nadezhda Smirnova, and your hosts
Svetlana Yekimenko
and Pavel Novichkov. All the very best to you, and may God save you from all evil, visible and invisible. In the Voice of Russia World Service, welcome to another edition of the Christian Message from Moscow. Today you will hear a continuation of our narrative about St. Fyodor of Tomsk. Tomsk is a town in West Siberia. First, let me briefly remind you the contents of the previous part.
St. Fyodor of Tomsk appeared in Siberia in the autumn of 1836 as an exile. He was arrested by the local police in the Urals as a vagrant and brought before the court. Tall and pious-looking, the elderly man with his aristocratic ways soon had the judges favorably disposed towards him, but he nonetheless refused to tell them his name, rank, and where he was heading to. As a result, he was sentenced to 20 lashes and exiled to Siberia. Curiously, the elder seemed quite satisfied with the sentence. However, pleading ignorance and illiteracy, he refused to sign the sentence in his own hand. Meanwhile, many of those who knew the elder insisted he was not only literate, but brilliantly educated. The exquisite manners of the elder Fyodor, his kindness towards everyone and generous care for all who were weak and needy, soon disposed the officers and soldiers accompanying the exiled, as well as the hundreds of convicts themselves, in his favor. In fact, he commanded such trust that he was the only one of the party of exiles who was left unshackled. Fyodor lived the pious life of an ascetic. He prayed extensively, and the Lord endowed him with the gifts of foresight, spiritual vision, and ability to cure others. This could not but draw thousands of people to him. People of noble calling, too, paid him frequent visits. When receiving them, the elder spoke in French and other European languages. One of the clergymen exiled to Siberia for some misdemeanor upon seeing elder Fyodor was struck by his resemblance to Russian Tsar Alexander I, whom he had frequently encountered in St. Petersburg and who died in 1825. The elder immediately changed his place of abode. The authorities allowed him to do this in the boundaries of one district. Meanwhile, rumors spread across Siberia that Emperor Alexander I hadn't died at all, but only simulated his death to dedicate his life to the feat of pilgrimage in the guise of elder Fyodor. There was quite a lot of indirect proof to corroborate all this. In 1858, elder Fyodor got an invitation from a wealthy and powerful merchant, Semyon Hromov, to take up residence with him in the town of Tomsk. The elder accepted this offer. The authorities did not object to the exile's relocation to the merchant's residence. And now we shall tell you about elder Fyodor's life in Tomsk. These were the last years of his life. He was already over 80.
Accepting the invitation of merchant Simeon Khromov, Elder Fyodor, as a devout ascetic, was hardly seeking particular comforts. In taking this decision, he relied exclusively on the will of God, which had been revealed to him some 20 years prior to his encounter with Simeon Khromov. In 1837, it was predicted to him that he would be residing in Tomsk at the home of a merchant. The elder moved to Tomsk on the 31st of October 1858. To begin with, he occupied the attic in Khromov's house, and later a specially built for him cell in the woods some 4 kilometers out of town. Later on, the merchant Simeon Khromov built a special cell for Elder Fyodor in the garden near his house, where the latter lived out the end of his days in solitude, rigid fast, and constant prayer. The degree of care shown him was established by the zealot himself, so the lifestyle of the elder in the town of Tomsk didn't differ much from the life he led in his village retreat. The same asceticism in his cell, food and clothes. A local bishop, Pyotr, wrote,
"The elder partook very little of food and always limited himself to a lean diet. Rye bread, cabbage soup with mushrooms, at times peas, and on big Orthodox feasts he allowed himself fish and eggs. Before lunch he always prayed at length and always made 4 prostrations, 3 to the Holy Trinity and the 4th to the Holy Mother of God. He had no bed to speak of, just a bunk near the stove without any mattress or blanket, only a block of wood for a pillow."
Throughout the entire Tomsk period, just as was the case earlier, numerous miraculous happenings were linked with the elder's dwelling. Like, for example, the testimony of Bishop Pyotr we mentioned previously, who personally knew Elder Fyodor and was the author of one of his biographies.
People who visited the elder often sensed a remarkable scent in his cell, one that cannot be linked to any known perfume or aroma. Many also saw a light glowing in his cell at night, when it was a known fact that the elder never lit either candles or icon lamp in his dwelling, always choosing to remain in darkness. The elder told merchant Khromov that even without a fire, he always had light in his cell at nightfall.
Running ahead, let me say that after the elder's demise, in his woodland cell not far from Tomsk, witnesses also testified to seeing a wondrous light. The archives contain the following testimony.
On February the 16th, 1867, some robbers on horseback came to the elder's cell, but hurried away, fearful of the strange lights.
The wife of a guardsman living nearby, Claudia Chernyshova, said that as she came out late one evening, she saw such an unusual light in the elder's discarded cell that she became afraid. There were also numerous testimonies that a fragrant aroma was felt in the former cell long after the elder's demise. On occasion, choral singing of prayers could be heard coming from the ascetic dwelling of the elder Fyodor. There was an unearthly quality about that singing. A chorister of the Tomsk bishopric, Ivan Yefimov, confirmed hearing it. In the last years of his life, the elder only left his cell to go to church. The St. Alexei monastery was not far from the elder's residence. St. Fyodor maintained constant contact with the brethren there and the Father Superior, Archimandrite Viktor Lebedev. The latter was a highly educated and extremely kind man. No one ever left him without receiving the help or advice they had come seeking from him. Archimandrite Viktor displayed tremendous respect towards the elder Fyodor, and never embarked on a single serious deed without the latter's advice and blessing. This was confirmed by people who knew them both. The elder also communicated with other clergymen, such as Bishop Parfeni, who confided in a conversation with merchant Khromov,
The elder told me that he had visions of a heavenly light, that he'd seen the Holy Trinity, that it was revealed to him when he would die, and many other things.
The merchant Khromov was not greatly surprised at hearing this, since Elder Fyodor had frequently told him that
through God's great grace he was daily bestowed the Lord's meal. In other words, he received the Eucharist through the Lord's angel.
Tomsk was a gubernia town. Representatives of all the classes began to visit Elder Fyodor, and such was the latter's reputation that even the governor deemed it his duty to drop in at the elder's cell and converse with him at length, eye to eye. These conversations touched on matters of spiritual life and outstanding public issues. The elder was just as well versed in matters of state and public life as he was in the spiritual side of things.
The elder's contemporary, who resided in Tomsk, the Fool in Christ Domna, recalled.
When he lived in the garden in a cell, once when I was very ill, I remained in that garden by night in the hopes of going to him for a cure. I began knocking on the door. He opened the door, and I only stepped across the threshold when I felt cured. A holy old man he was.
We would like to add that the Fool in Christ Domna herself is a locally honored and venerated saint.
In the Tomsk period of his life, Elder Fyodor regarded merchant Simeon Khromov in the light of his closest spiritual child. The merchant was totally devoted to the zealot and sincerely did his best to aid him in everything. Elder Fyodor responded to this in kind by displaying tremendous trust in the merchant and informing him of many miraculous visions that had been sent to him from above.
The merchant's elder daughter Anna also had a strong spiritual connection to Elder Fyodor. Generally, the entire Khromov family honored the elder in his lifetime and after his demise. The elder held members of this family also long after his death. Thus, the merchant himself and the husband of his youngest daughter, Zinovia, were cured of grave illnesses after drinking water which had been poured over a likeness of the elder made when he was still alive.
On the 20th of January 1864, Elder Fyodor sighed thrice deeply, and on the 4th, inhaling quietly, he passed away without a moan. In those minutes, the Khromov neighbors witnessed a veritable miracle. They saw how a huge flame of fire leaped out of the merchant's house 3 times, but there was no fire. Residents of Tomsk, who gathered various witness accounts of the demise of the elder, noted,
News of the death of Elder Fyodor swiftly spread across Tomsk and its environs. Crowds of people surrounded the Khromov house, where the mysterious hermit had spent his last breath. So great was his popularity that everyone, beginning with the local aristocracy and ending with the beggars, which the elder always gave generously to, rushed to pay their last respects to the wondrous saint.
The elder was buried near the altar of one of the churches of the St. Alexei monastery. Miracles that occurred in the elder's lifetime continued at his funeral dinner. Beverages and food had been prepared for around 30 people, while in actual fact there were over 80 guests attending. Nonetheless, according to witness accounts, there was food and drink enough for everyone, with plenty left over too. And another thing, when after the burial service Merchant Khromov gave the nun Sara, who could barely stand due to her debilitating illness, the portrait of Elder Fyodor to kiss, she became cured that instant. Presently residing in Tomsk is the great-granddaughter of merchant Simeon Khromov, Yevgenia. She's 90 years old. She has in her possession some of the things that used to belong to the elder Fyodor. These items were cherished by generations of Khromov family members, who used these precious belongings to cure themselves and other people too. Yevgenia spoke to a Moscow TV correspondent as she displayed these objects.
This
is the sponge the elder washed with, and these are his cap and his shirts. My mother kept the sponge and cap, while my aunt had the shirts. Sometimes there is a fragrance emanating from them. Once there was a large company of us gathered, and everyone sensed it.
Yevgenia's acquaintance Natalia Zelenova, a Tomsk old-timer, insists that only prayers addressed to Elder Fyodor helped her and like-minded to preserve the historical part of the town with its unique wooden houses from destruction. This is what she has to say.
Here is a house that is 151 years old. I have lived here all my life. They intend to demolish it, along with a number of similarly unique buildings, to construct on their site some panel housing. We're activists for the protection of historical monuments, so we marched with slogans and banners in protest against the barbarous destruction of unique historical sites. But everything was in vain. The authorities simply refused to hear us. Only after we prayed to Elder Fyodor did we manage to get a response from the powers that be. As a result, in 2005, a program was adopted for the preservation of ancient wooden architecture in Tomsk. Thus, the elder is a patron of our town and helps us protect it, said Natalia Zelenova. There was a place in Tomsk which the elder particularly loved visiting. It's a place where a spring falls into the river Ushaika. Today, the spot is a pilgrimage site for people from all across Siberia. At the end of the 19th century, the last Russian Emperor Nikolai II came here. The image of the mysterious elder always intrigued the minds of representatives of the Romanov dynasty. However, they didn't dare speak publicly about this. Proof of Elder Fyodor being none other than Emperor Alexander I could have cast serious doubt over the legality of the succession to the throne. Tomsk local historian Gennady Skvortsov says,
В 1958 году в Канаде состоялась знаменательная встреча князя Трубецкого, русского иммигранта, проживающего в Канаде.
In 1958, in Canada, Prince Trubetskoy, a Russian emigrant residing in Canada, met up with the Great Duchess Olga, daughter of Emperor Alexander III, and sister of the last Russian Emperor Nikolai II. In their conversation, Prince Trubetskoy asked the Duchess about her personal attitude to the legend of the elder Fyodor and Emperor Alexander I being one and the same man. To this she replied that the royal family never had any doubts about this being true. She also said that her father, Emperor Alexander III, said, "Do you know, children, that the remains of our great ancestor Alexander Pavlovich are buried in Tomsk?"
Once, upon coming to Elder Fyodor's cell, Merchant Khromov stood before him on his knees and asked, "Word has it that you are none other than Emperor Alexander the Blessed. Is this true?" Upon hearing this, the elder made the sign of the cross and said, "Wondrous are your deeds, Lord. There is no secret that shall not be revealed. And after the elder's demise on February the 2nd, 1864, a sign was discovered behind the icon of the Mother of God that hung in his cell. It was the royal monogram, the letter A, written in his hand. Hegumen Siloan of the St. Alexei Monastery, which houses the holy relics of St. Fyodor of Tomsk, told a correspondent of one of Moscow's TV channels,
«Тайна святости, которая у меня не вызывает ни малейших сомнений. Безусловно, старец Фёдор был величайшим подвижником, святым».
We see before us a sacrament of holiness which, in my opinion, cannot be put to any doubt. For certain, St. Fyodor of Tomsk was a devout zealot, and in this respect I feel him answer my prayers. As to who he was in the past, I believe this is a secondary issue, although, without doubt, it is important. Particularly for our time. For if indeed he was the emperor, truth of which is substantiated by numerous convincing arguments, then it transpires that a man at the summit of power and glory chose to willingly opt for something greater, and this something is the Lord. And an example like this is very important for the people of today, often lured by earthly attractions and boons to the point of growing oblivious of the heavenly kingdom. There is something so much greater than success here on earth, something more important and wonderful, spiritually gratifying, said Hegumen Siloan.
You were listening to a narrative about the local Saint Fyodor of Tomsk. And there we end another edition of the Christian Message from Moscow. It was directed by Vladimir Dyomin, author and music editor Tatiana Shvitsova, sound engineers Yelena Gashenikova and Nadezhda Smirnova, and your hosts
Svetlana Yakimenko
and Pavel Novichkov. This edition made use of materials from the program Orthodox Encyclopedia, shown on Channel 3 of Moscow Television. We wish you all the best, and may God save you from all evil, visible and invisible.